Hello there! This is a video about IELTS Listening Section 3. Today we're going to look at two more skills and two new kinds of tasks that so often come up in the IELTS listening test. Now they can be really tricky if you don't know what to do, but they can actually be quite easy if you do know what to do. So don't miss my top tips and strategies on how to do your best with these. And of course, there are authentic exam tasks with answers to see how well you do in this part of the test. So stay tuned. So if you're planning on taking the IELTS test or you just want to know more about it, then go on, subscribe to Home Studies. So what is IELTS Listening Section 3 all about? It is a conversation between 2 to 4 people who are often students and university tutors, teachers, lecturers, or something like that. That said, the speakers talk about a topic of academic interest, so in the context of education or training. And there are up to 3 tasks. So these could be a flowchart, a multiple choice, sentence completion, a diagram you need to label, something like that. And again, there are 10 questions, with, as always, a short break between the tasks. In IELTS Listening Section 3, you might need to identify the speaker's attitudes. What's that? Well, it's basically their opinion on a topic. Now, when you talk to someone, you generally get clues about their attitude, about what they want to say, by their body language or their facial expressions or their gestures, for example. But when you're talking to someone on the phone and you've got the audio only, you don't have that help. So it's more difficult. You need to pay attention to their word choices and their intonation to better understand their attitude, their opinion, and their meaning. Let's start with the word choice. So you'll need to listen out for specific adjectives that the speakers use to give their points of view. You may even need to match the adjective in the audio to a synonym in the questions, like these. So pause the video and try and match the words 1 to 8 with the synonyms A to H. Then check with your home studies teacher to make sure you can use these words in the right context, because although they are synonyms, there might be small differences, small nuances in how we use them in different contexts. So how many of these pairs of synonyms did you manage to guess? Well, I'm going to give you a top tip now, so listen up. In the IELTS speaking test, you can use the synonyms on the right, the ones in orange, to upgrade your speaking. So for example, if you are talking about your work or employment, and you say, I was a bit unsure about the job offer I got, you could upgrade that answer by changing the underlined word. What could you say? Exactly. You could say, I was a bit dubious about the job offer. And just like that, by changing one word, you go from a band 6 to a band 8. Voila. There is no way that you're going to understand every word that the speakers use in the recording. It's just not going to happen. So this is why you need to try and understand what the speakers say to understand their attitudes from the context. And this is a very important skill in IELTS Listening Section 3, and we want you to get it right. So we're giving you a free practice pack for your self-study after the video. Just click the link in the description box below. With that in mind, understanding the importance of context, how well can you analyze what the speakers say to identify their attitudes? Well, let's try an exam task to find out. Which opinion does each person express about filling out the evaluation forms? Choose the answer from the box and write the letters A to F next to questions 21 to 23. Before you listen, give yourself 15 seconds to read the opinions and underline the keywords.
Joshua, Ethan, wait! Don't leave yet. We have to fill in an evaluation form to hand in with our final project.
Oh, not another one. We've done one of these forms after each project all term. It's a bit of a waste of time if you ask me.
They just want to give us a chance to have our say about the project.
But I haven't much of an opinion about it either way. It's just a project.
Yeah, but if you did...
Then it wouldn't be a waste of time, I suppose. What's your point?
Well, just say you have no opinion. What's the problem with that?
You're right, I'll do that. And it'll be easier than making something up. But even if we had issues and wrote them down, do you think anyone reads them? I rather doubt it.
Of course they do. Remember in the first term, when there were some problems with people in some groups not doing their fair share of the work? There were lots of comments about this on the evaluation forms, and so Dr. Smith came and talked to us about it and decided to add the individual evaluation forms so we could each evaluate our other group members' effort. That was a really important outcome.
See, Ethan, without the evaluation forms, we wouldn't have the opportunity to report what a slacker you are.
Oh, come on. I've done as much work as anyone.
Yeah, it's easy to joke around because we're a good team. My last team wasn't so good, though, and I was really grateful for those forms.
OK, let's get it done so we can go.
Check your answers. How did you do? Could you identify their attitudes? Let's take a closer look at their exact wording to see why these answers are correct. Let's start with Joshua, who said, which is basically the same way as saying it's all right to say that you don't have an opinion about them. Then, let's look at Ethan. He said this, which is another way of saying that it's probable that no one reads these evaluations. And finally, Lucy. She said this. This one's a bit longer, but the basic idea is that the important changes, or the outcome that she mentions, has been made because of the forms. So you can see that everything you need to know about the speaker's attitude or opinion on the topics is in the audio text. So listen carefully to their words because that's where you'll find the information that you need. You're doing a great job, so let's keep going. Let's keep working on those listening skills, okay? Now it's time to focus on a table completion task. And these are very common in IELTS listening section 3. What you need to do here is look at the table, which is basically a summary of the speaker's opinions about the project. Then you need to fill the gaps with the information you hear in the recording. And the key information here is that you need to write down the exact words that the speakers use. Don't change them, don't paraphrase them, write down exactly what you hear. In this task, write no more than 3 words and/or a number for each answer.
OK, first we have to rate the project from 1 to 5 and comment on any good or bad points.
We do this part together?
Yeah. What do you think? 4?
Yeah, why not?
Why 4 and not 5? I don't really think there was much wrong with it. It was a good project. The tasks were well thought out. Not like the last one where one of the tasks was impossible because there was no research on the subject.
I agree with you, Josh. There weren't technically any problems with the project. It's just that I like projects to have a sort of practical point. You know, we should see some sort of reason for doing it, other than the grade, of course. If it had some sort of real-world application, it would have been perfect. What do you think, Ethan?
I don't know. Why don't we give it a 4.5?
That's a good idea. Can we do that?
I don't see why not. And I agree. 4.5.
So, what about good points? Josh said it's well thought out. Anything else?
I liked having a choice between 2 topics. I mean, some topics just don't interest some people.
Yes, you're right. Unfortunately, I thought they were both boring. Oh, I'm sounding a bit negative, aren't I? I can't think of any specific good points.
Oh, that's all right. Let's move on to the bad points.
You're eager to go, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm going camping tomorrow and I have to pack. But back to the topic. I haven't got an opinion about bad points. Lily's already said her share. What about you, Joshua? Any complaints?
No, I think it was a good project. Well, if I had to say something, I guess it would be the timescale. I think they should have given us more time to do this final project, since it was a larger part of our grade. But I don't think that's a big deal.
OK, I think we're done. We just have to do the individual evaluation forms, and that's it.
Take a moment now to check your answers. As you can see, the first 3 answers are numbers and the last 4 answers are words. Now make sure that you've spelt the words correctly, okay? Because if you make a spelling mistake, then you lose your point. And that's a tragedy, but that's a reality. So of the 7 points on offer in this task, how many of them did you get? My goodness, do my students complain about this in the exam. It's so difficult to understand attitude from a context where it's audio only, where you don't have any visual clues to help you. So if you need the kind of support that I give my students, then I invite you to sign up for a free trial lesson with Home Studies. We offer custom-made one-to-one IELTS preparation courses with experienced exam trainers on Zoom. So don't miss this chance to sign up for a fully flexible course with us. We can identify your needs and what you need to do in order to achieve your band score. Just click the link below. Good. Now back to the video. Oftentimes in the IELTS listening paper, you'll hear answers that sound like they might be right, but they're not for some specific reason. So these answers that look like they could be correct, but they're actually wrong, are called distractors. And believe me, you need to watch out for those because IELTS love them and they put them in everywhere. So the distractor is designed to trick you. It's designed to see whether you can notice the difference between a right answer and a wrong one. To understand how these distractors pop up in the exam task, let's look at an example question. What is the doctor's name? Is it A, Dr. Garrison, B, Dr. Peters, or C, Dr. Smith? Well, let's analyze a listening transcript to find out what the answer is. Pause the video and read the short extract. So as you might have seen, there's not one, but 2 distractors. So Garrison is the patient's surname, so A is a distractor, and Peter is the patient's first name, so that is another distractor. So the answer is C. His name is Dr. Smith. Now, it's not too difficult to spot the distractors when you have the text in front of you. But when you're listening to a dialogue and you've got native speakers speaking quickly, it can be a bit more difficult. So let's look at another exam question. The patient is looking for a remedy for his A, obesity, B, lack of exercise, or C, stomach complaint. This time, listen to the audio and try to identify the correct answer and the distractors.
Hello, Dr. Smith. Can I come in?
Yes, please, sit down. I won't be a minute.
Thank you.
You would be Mr. Garrison?
Yes, Peter Garrison.
Okay, what seems to be the problem, Mr. Garrison?
I've been having some pains in my stomach and it's been bothering me for nearly 2 weeks. Actually, 10 days to be exact.
What happened at the time the pain started?
I was having dinner with my family and I thought I must have eaten something that didn't sit well in my stomach.
Then what did you do?
I drank a glass of Alka-Seltzer to ease the pain, but it didn't work.
Do you remember what it was that you ate at the time the pain started?
Yes. I was eating pumpkin soup with bread, and then we had roast chicken, potatoes, some vegetables, and afterwards dessert. I think it was chocolate pudding. with cream.
That's quite a lot of food.
Yes, well, I do like to eat.
Do you do any form of exercise?
No, not really. I mean, sometimes I might go for a walk.
How often?
Maybe once a month.
And for how many hours?
Oh, no, not a long walk. I might walk to the local shops instead of taking my car.
How far away is the shop?
About 5 minutes.
By car?
No, on foot.
Well, I think the problem here is that you're quite overweight from the looks of things. You don't exercise and you eat far too much. So I'd say the issue you're having with your stomach is something that was inevitable. I'm going to suggest a few things, but you have to comply. Otherwise, there's no point in me going on.
So, it's serious.
It will be if you don't take steps to change your lifestyle.
How did you get on with that? Well, A is a distractor. The doctor says, well, I think the problem here is that you're quite overweight from the look of things. This shows that obesity is the doctor's concern, not the patient's. B is also a distractor for the same reason, because the doctor clearly states, you don't exercise. So again, the answer is C. And it's true because the patient complains, I've been having some pains in my stomach. I'm just here again with a little reminder to tell you not to forget your predictions. So in the time you have before you listen, read the sentences, look at the gaps, and see if you can come up with any educated guesses about what kind of information could fill them. So let's practice your predicting skills. But here I want to coach you a little bit to make sure that you're going about this the right way. So I'm going to give you a hint for each one, and you can write down the parts of speech you need to listen for. And if you have an idea about what the exact word might be, please write that down too. So number 21, it's going to be a noun. The answer must be something that people write for a newspaper. Do you know what that word could be? Number 22 is going to be an adjective. So, what adjective do you think might fit the context? Number 23 is a verb. So, what might you do if you want to listen again to a conversation you record at a later time? What is that verb? What do you do? Number 24, the answer is going to be a number, as in the number of references he writes a year. In this case, your guess is as good as mine. And number 25 is also going to be a noun. So what is the word we use for when you ask politely for something? You make a, that is the missing noun. Do you know what it is? So now you've got some predictions written down. Let's do the exam task and see how many of them you can get right.
Hello, Dr. Kitching. My name's Jessica. I work for the student newspaper. I called you last week to ask if I could interview you for an article about how to ask for references.
Oh, yes, I remember. Come in, have a seat.
Thank you. Do you have a few minutes now to do the interview?
Yes, that's fine.
Great. I got the idea to do this article because, well, everyone I know is rather puzzled about how to get references from professors when they need them for applications for jobs or postgraduate studies. And I thought since you're a professor and you've been working as a student advisor for many years also, what better person to ask?
Yes, I have got some advice I can share on this topic. Where shall we begin?
First of all, do you mind if I record our conversation?
No, I don't mind.
Thanks. Do you write many references yourself?
Oh, yes, I certainly do. Let's see. It's variable, of course, but I'd say I average at least 50 per year.
My goodness, that's nearly 5 per month. It's more than 1 per week.
Yes, it's a lot. And of course, most of the requests are made in the spring or early summer, when students are starting to think seriously about where they'll be heading after they graduate in June.
Do most professors do so many?
Yes, it's part of the job. Of course, because I'm an advisor, students probably feel like I know them rather better than some professors, so I probably get a few more than I would otherwise.
Check your answers. Of the 5 points on offer, how many of them did you manage to get? And I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Make sure you've got your spelling right. By the way, did you hear the distractor in that part of the interview? I'm telling you, they pop up everywhere. So this distractor was connected to the numbers because he said, I write at least 50 per year. And then she said 5 per month or 1 per week. So 5 and 1 were sneaky distractors designed to take your attention away from the correct answer. Let's now take a closer look at the flowchart completion task, which is pretty common in IELTS listening section 3. So when you complete a flowchart, you need to follow the development of a discussion and fill in each space in the flowchart by matching what you hear with the options in the box. Now, the good news is that the steps in the flowchart are in the same order as what you hear in the recording. So to tackle the task, you first need to look at the heading of the flowchart to get the general idea of what it's about. Then look at the number of gaps in the flowchart so you know how many answers you need to write down. After that, look at the list of options in the box. There will be a few of them that you don't need. And finally, look at each line of the flowchart and try to predict what might fit in each gap. So here is a continuation of the task we did before on the interview about asking for references after graduation. Now, when you look at the task, when you look at the flowchart, you can kind of make some educated guesses as you predict. For example, it says for number 26 that you start with a or an. So if you're asking for a reference, you're likely to start with an email or a telephone call, right? You're not likely to start with a course or a meeting. Logically, this doesn't make sense. So when you do your predictions, think about if you were doing this activity, which actions would come first in the process. Now pause the video and give yourself 15 seconds to look at the task and to try and make some logical predictions. Then when you're ready, press play to listen to the recording.
So what do we students need to know in terms of asking for references or letters of recommendation? It's incredibly daunting, actually, particularly since we have such large classes. I'm not sure if my professors even know who I am.
Yes, that's probably the biggest issue students face in getting references. You will invariably have to contact former professors, even if you have never spoken to them outside of class. Following on this, if I were giving a first-year student advice, I would say to make sure you've had contact with several professors outside of class so you won't be a stranger. All it takes is visiting during office hours, even if it's just to say, "Hello, I'm enjoying your lectures."
But what if we didn't do that?
Then you'll just have to contact your professor anyway. Make a telephone call, tell him or her who you are and what classes you attended, this sort of thing. Remember, for your professor, recalling an average student out of hundreds and hundreds isn't easy. So tell him or her what course you took and what semester and year it was. Include what grade you got and anything memorable. Perhaps you spilled your coffee. Though at the time it wasn't funny, it might be enough for Professor Brown to remember you and it won't shed any negative light on you. It was an accident. Or perhaps, although you never spoke outside of class, you went up and asked a question that was a great one. Any information you can give to identify yourself is going to help you out.
Should I visit Professor Brown in person?
Yes, that would be ideal. I would suggest giving the information first over the phone, then follow up by emailing it to your professor. During the phone conversation, ask if you could meet briefly. This will be both a physical reminder of who you are and also another chance to make a good impression.
Isn't it very difficult to write references for all these students you've never spoken to or really even met?
Yes. For example, I was recently called by a student from 20 years ago. He lived in another country. I really didn't recall him. He told me a little about himself, and I looked back at his records. I told him that all I could do was verify that he was in my class, that he showed up for all the classes, and that he received a 3.4 in my class. Sometimes I'm very surprised that students who did very poorly in my class ask me for a reference.
What do you do in that case? Give a poor reference?
I, like most professors I know, never say anything negative about the student. However, it is what is unsaid that can say it all. So you really want to make sure you're remembered in a positive way and have left a good impression.
OK, thanks very much for all this information. The story should come out in our next printing, so if you're interested, I'll drop one copy over to you.
I'll be looking forward to seeing it.
Check your answers. So of the 5 points on offer in this task, how many of them did you manage to get? And more importantly, did you manage to predict any of them correctly before you even listened? If so, great job. Well, that's gonna do it. If you enjoyed the video, go on, give us a like, and do stay tuned for the next video tutorials in our IELTS listening series. Thanks for watching, and cheerio!